What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey May Larry. So today's a beautiful day out here in Boston. I'm going to try to do this episode outside, so I do apologize if you hear any wind or cars driving by. I do apologize. Just want to talk about the LA Clippers really quick before their Game 5 matchup tonight against the Denver Nuggets. So the Clippers lost a really tough Game 4. Game 3 they did win, which was awesome, and then Game 4 lost at the buzzer on, I guess, the closest shot to the buzzer you'll ever see, with Aaron Gordon basically having a dunk as time expired. That's the closest you'll ever get to a shot counting or not counting, especially in the playoffs. That was obviously a really tough way to lose. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about Game 3 really quick, and then I will talk about Game 4. Game 3 was on Thursday night of this past week, which it was a great stretch to be a Giants fan and a Clippers fan. Within a 3-hour window, the Clippers beat the Nuggets by 34 points. And then in the NFL draft, the Giants drafted Abdul Carter with the 3rd overall pick, and they also traded back into the first round to get Jackson Dart, a quarterback, at 25th overall out of Ole Miss. It was a great stretch of time to be a Giants and a Clippers fan. In Game 3, the Clippers won by 34 points. The Clippers shot 46% from 3 in that game, so they were just lights out shooting the ball. Kawhi, Norman Powell, Ivica Zubac, James Harden, they all played very, very well in this game, all scoring 19-plus points, all right around 20 points in that game each, which was awesome to see. Kawhi stood out, 21 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. A play that stood out off of the Clippers bench was Nick Batum, and every single night he does a little thing that adds up to potentially winning the game. He just does so many things on the defensive end, rebounding the ball, scoring the ball. He can just stand in the corner, basically, and the defense has to stay on him because he is a good shooter, so he does stretch out the floor for the Clippers and does open up the paint. So if you have basically a 3 or a 4 that has to cover him, that opens up potentially a lane for James Harden to drive down, which is awesome. And he played very well in this game, Batum, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, with 3 blocks, did have 4 threes made in that game. Does a lot of little things that add up to wins on a nightly basis. A very underrated player overall. So it was a great Game 3 win for the Clippers. As I said, they won by 34 points. Michael Porter Jr., a guy that was tough for the Clippers in Game 2, especially rebounding-wise. He had 15 rebounds in Game 2, even though the Clippers did win that game. In Game 3, though, he struggled, only had 7 points on 2 of 9 shooting from the floor. Was a big factor in Game 2, as I noted, but Game 3, MPJ did struggle. He's been streaky all year long, it seems, and in my opinion, the Clippers are a much deeper team than the Denver Nuggets. I think they're a much better team than the Denver Nuggets, but a lot of these games have just come down to an error here or there, especially in some big moments, and some of those errors have cost the Clippers wins. That's why it's a 2-2 series right now. The Clippers are the better team in my eyes, but at the end of the day, it's 2-2 because the Clippers made some mistakes, especially in crunch time, that really costed them, especially when you look at some of the offensive rebounds, which I'll get into in just a few minutes. But offensive rebounding has been a major factor in this series, and Denver has been dominating on the offensive glass, especially in the last 5 minutes of the game when it's a 5-point game. And that's what clutch time is, essentially. 5-point game with 5 minutes or less to go, and the Clippers have really struggled rebounding the ball in those moments, and that's the issue here in this series. So then on Saturday, it was Game 4, which the Denver Nuggets won this game by 2 points. If I remember the final score, it was 101-99 or 99-97. The Clippers lost by 2 points in that one. The Clippers shot 61% in the fourth quarter, really gave themselves a chance. They were down by 22 at one point in the fourth, but they shot 61% in the fourth quarter, had a great 32-9 run, and that's correct. 32-9 was the Clippers' run in the fourth quarter to get them back in the game and give them a chance to win. It was excellent shot making from Norman Powell that gave them a chance. It was excellent shot making from Kawhi Leonard that gave them a chance. They outscored Denver 34-16 in the fourth. Credit to Ty Lue in the defensive end, and obviously Jeff Van Gundy as well. JVG and Ty Lue put together a great game plan that was a defensive formation that was basically a zone that forced the Denver Nuggets to turn the ball over and take tough shots. And it was a tough zone to honestly track in real time. I was trying to see what the Clippers are doing with that zone. It was just really tough to follow, and I feel like I should probably go back and watch it. But I haven't really gone back and watched that game since I was upset with the way things ended. I was frustrated with that loss. I didn't want to go back and relive it. But when I was watching that zone, the Clippers just always had an extra guy attacking the ball. They were forcing some really tough shots. And the Nuggets had a tough time finding the open man because that's how good the Clippers defense was. They always had somebody kind of that was close to the open man where they couldn't just basically swing the ball and, find that guy open in the corner, because if they do, the Clippers had a chance of deflecting it or potentially stealing it. It was just great defense. So credit to Ty Lue and Van Gundy with that great zone. It really got the Clippers back into the game. It was an elite defense that forced a lot of turnovers. It forced a lot of tough shots. And that really stood out to me, that got the Clippers back in that game, especially in the last 7 or so minutes. The game ultimately came down to the last play. Denver inbounded the ball with 8 seconds left to go in a tie game. They had a chance to potentially get a game-winning shot out of Jokic. Jokic forced a tough shot. Ivica Zubac had great defense. It was an air ball that was ultimately rebounded by Aaron Gordon, who dunked the ball as time expired. He found the ball right around the rim and basically dunked it as time expired. And it looked like to me, even in the slow motion, when I watched it, when they were showing it on TV, and then I saw it on Twitter just a few minutes after that, it looked like his fingertips were still on the ball as the ball went through the net. But nevertheless, the shot counted and the Clippers lost the game. The Clippers have no one else to blame but themselves. You can't really blame the referees for the way that shot was called. At the end of the day, the call on the floor was that was a bucket, and it was going to be tough to overturn. And if you look at it, the Clippers put themselves in this position. Not rebounding that ball in that moment was a big, big reason they lost that game. But then you also look at the position the Clippers put themselves in, down by 22 in the fourth quarter, going ice cold on offense and just letting the Nuggets have their way on the offensive end. The Clippers struggled on defense in that third quarter, especially after the altercation at halftime. James Harden got into an altercation with Christian Brown, and that ended up with Aaron Gordon getting into an argument, and Norman Powell and Chris Dunn, all of them receiving technical fouls. And that ended up being a big momentum shifter for the Denver Nuggets. They were completely clicking in the third quarter after that happened at halftime, and that was, I think, a big turning point there for the Clippers, which at the end of the day, you never want to get into an argument that gives the other teams momentum, but that gave the Nuggets momentum, and that ended up hurting the Clippers at the end of the day. But the Clippers have no one else to blame but themselves. This was a do-or-die game at home. 2-1 series lead, could potentially make it a 3-1 lead heading back to Denver, but instead now it is a 2-2 tie heading back to Denver, and a 3-1 lead versus a 2-2 lead in the playoffs is a major, major difference, especially when you're going now on the road with the 2-2 series tie. The Clippers are the better team in my eyes. I think they're a better team roster-wise, and I think talent-wise they're a better team. I think they have more scoring options. I think they're a better defensive team. But the issue has come down to some rebounding in some big moments, and that's the issue there for the Clippers. Rebounding in crunch time has been a major issue. If they could just rebound in the clutch, they would have swept Denver, I think, at this point. If you look at Game 1, rebounding in crunch time was a big, big issue for them, where they gave Aaron Gordon and Russell Westbrook extra chances for the Denver Nuggets to score, and that cost them Game 1. And then in Game 4, obviously, giving Aaron Gordon that chance at the rim, that was a major, major issue, and then they end up winning the game on that shot. The Denver Nuggets have rebounded 35.4% of their offensive rebounding chances, which is second best in the playoffs. They're also averaging 3.7 offensive rebounds per game in clutch time, which is the best in the NBA. The next closest is the Golden State Warriors, who have just 1 offensive rebound per game in clutch time. So the Nuggets basically have 3 more offensive rebounds in clutch time per game than any other team in the NBA in the playoffs, which obviously shows the Clippers have really struggled in the clutch, trying to rebound the glass. And then Denver also has 7 rebounds per game in clutch time, which is number 1 in the NBA. The next closest is the Minnesota Timberwolves with 4.5 rebounds per game in clutch time. So the Nuggets have basically 3 more rebounds per game in clutch time than any team in the NBA, and also 3 more offensive rebounds per game in clutch time than any other team in the NBA. That actually looms pretty large. That's why the series is 2-2 heading back to Denver rather than being either 3-1 or 4-0 in favor of the Clippers. And if you look back at some of the struggles for the Clippers, I think obviously their shooting in some moments was a struggle. Derrick Jones Jr. struggled at times. Chris Dunn has struggled at times. They need those 2 guys to shoot better from 3, because if they don't, that ends up letting Denver basically sag off of those 2 guys and basically potentially double either Ivica Zubac or maybe even double Kawhi Leonard. And if they could just shoot better in some of those moments, that would force Denver to not sag off of them and also open up the paint maybe potentially for Zoo or maybe Kawhi Leonard. That's been a major difference in this series. And if they could potentially even drive, which I know Chris Dunn has done better driving the ball over the past 2 months than he did early on in the season. If he could just drive in some of those moments and force the defense to pick him up, same thing with Derrick Jones Jr., it could potentially open up other guys. So that could definitely play a role there for the Clippers maybe having a better Game 5. A lot of the time, they're just left wide open. If they just drive, they maybe even have a floater or maybe get into the lane and force the defense to pick them up and maybe get fouled. That could be a major difference for the Clippers tonight. And they also need to limit turnovers. That's the game plan for tonight. Limit turnovers, limit offensive rebounding, and you need better shooting out of your role players like Chris Dunn and Derrick Jones Jr. And one other thing I want to note, which I forgot to mention when I was talking about that last play that Aaron Gordon won the game for the Denver Nuggets in Game 3. In that play, I rewatched it right after it happened. And on that play, and shout out to my buddy Jameer, who also pointed this out, and I didn't realize it until he said it, and then I went right back after that play happened. I went back and watched the highlight. On that final play of the game, the Clippers rolled out there with Norman Powell, James Harden, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Kawhi Leonard, and Ivica Zubac. And if you look at that lineup, there are 3 players that aren't great defensively. 2 very good defensive players in Kawhi Leonard and Ivica Zubac. And then they have Norman Powell out there, James Harden, and Bogdan Bogdanovic. Those three players are not great on the defensive end, which they've had their moments, and they both all try on the defensive end. James Harden definitely has quick hands. It definitely gets in the passing lane sometimes. It even gets some blocks. So maybe I understand him being out there, but Bogdanovic and Norman Powell should have been out of the game, and the Clippers should have had either Nick Batum, Derrick Jones Jr., or Chris Dunn in that game. It made no sense to have Bogdanovic, Harden, and Norman Powell in that game. There's 8 seconds left to go. You have no timeouts. Even if you get the ball, you're not going to be able to call a timeout and try to get a play on the offensive end. You're playing for overtime, essentially. Nick Batum, Derrick Jones Jr., Chris Dunn had to be in that game. Take out Harden, take out Bogdanovic, take out Powell, throw Batum in that lineup, throw Dunn in that lineup, throw Jones Jr. in that lineup, and you probably get the stop at the defensive end, and you also have a better chance of rebounding the ball with those three guys in the game, considering a few of them are taller than those three guys that were in the lineup, and they're all better defensive players than what the Clippers had out there in that moment. So Ty Lue probably could have been better in that moment. At the end of the day, nevertheless, it's a 2-2 series tie now. I don't really feel great about the Clippers now going into Denver in a 2-2 tie. Now it's basically a new series, and you got to win a best of 3. The Clippers did win Game 2 in Denver, gave them a great position to potentially win the series, and take basically full domination of the series in LA. If they could just win Game 3 and 4, they win Game 3, lose Game 4. I saw Game 4 as a do or die. 3-1 series lead versus a 2-2 tie is a major difference. I saw Game 3 as a must-win just to get the series lead back. And then Game 4, I thought was a must-win just to basically take Denver out and have a 3-1 series lead and have just one game you need to win over the next 3. Obviously, that ends up not being the case. It's a 2-2 tie nevertheless. We'll see how the Clippers play tonight. It'll be a big moment for them, considering now they're on the road. I think they're the better team, but now you got to win a game in Denver, which after that Game 2 win in Denver, you could have just won all of your home games, Game 3 and Game 4, and then potentially Game 6, and you could have taken care of Denver that way, but that obviously ends up not being the case, and the Clippers find themselves in tough footing. But they're used to this. They're used to their backs being against the wall. The last month and a half, the Clippers have been one of the best teams in the NBA. So I really hope they can bounce back. Their defense was great in that last 6 minutes, besides that last play of the game when Aaron Gordon got another offensive rebound. They played well in that fourth quarter, gave themselves a chance to win, but obviously it was just too much to overcome considering how much of a deficit they put themselves in. And then obviously rebounding in the clutch has been a major issue, as I already noted. But we'll see how things go in Game 5 tonight in Denver. That's a 10 o'clock start. And then one other thing I want to mention is today's the Baseball Beanpot Championship. Northeastern and Harvard will be facing off at 7 o'clock at Fenway Park. Northeastern baseball has been playing great baseball as of late. They've continued to stay hot over the last month, winning 21 of their last 22 games. Yes, that's correct. 21 wins in their last 22 games. Won each of those games by 2+ runs. So they really haven't had many close games over that 22-game stretch. So credit to Mike Glavine and his squad. They always find a way to win a lot of those games by great pitching. That's been something that's been great for them over the last few years, is how great they are pitching. And these are some numbers I just want to mention really quick. So they've won 12 straight games. They're 16-2 in the CAA. And they've won, as I said, 21 of their last 22 games. The key to their success has been pitching. They have the number 1 whip in all of college baseball. They're number 1 in shutouts in all of college baseball. Just about almost a third of the games they've played in have been shutouts, which is pretty crazy. And then they are 3rd in ERA in college baseball. Their starting pitchers have been awesome. Avon Cabral, who's now more of a veteran in that rotation, a 2.59 ERA in 11 starts. He's been scoreless in 3 straight starts on the mound, 18 innings pitched, no runs allowed, 15 strikeouts to 2 walks. He's been brilliant for Northeastern. And then also, if you look at the way they've played offensively, they've been hitting the ball very, very well. You look at Cam Maldonado, who is potentially a first-round pick in July's MLB draft. And then you also look at Harrison Feinberg, another kid's put up some great numbers this season. Both of those guys have excelled at the plate. Maldonado is hitting .380 on the year with an 1128 OPS. Also has 11 home runs, 40 runs batted in 22 stolen bases in 26 attempts. Then you look at Feinberg, .376 batting average, adding in 13 home runs, 47 runs batted in, with a stolen base total of 26 stolen bases in 27 attempts. Both of those guys have been amazing this season. I watched them play a lot over the past couple seasons. Those two guys I thought had MLB potential, just the way they have great power, really good speed, in really good defense, and they also are just great contact hitters as well. Similar to Mike Sirota, all of those guys can kind of do anything you need to potentially win a baseball game, whether it's running the bases very well, hitting for power, hitting for contact, fielding. They just do all of those things very, very well. So credit to Mike Glavine. Obviously, this has been a great season for the Northeastern Huskies. They'll face a Harvard team who has struggled this season. They've really struggled putting wins together this year. Northeastern did play them earlier this season in a 3-game weekend series, which Northeastern ended up beating them in that series. All 3 games by a total score of 19-7. Northeastern is 7-8 in Beanpot Championship games all time for baseball, and Harvard is 4-9. This is the first championship appearance at Fenway for the Huskies since 2013, where they ended up winning that tournament over UMass 6-3. Northeastern did win last year, and this is their first time being in the championship game in back-to-back years since the 2009 and 2010 seasons. As for Harvard baseball, they're 11-22 on the year, 8-9 in their conference. They have had some tough games they've had to play. They did play Florida on the road early in the season, losing 3 of 3 games in Gainesville. That is a very tough matchup considering you're going on the road to a top 10 team in the country, especially early on in the season before the bats get hot and before you catch a rhythm. But it does show that this team's been battle-tested, playing some really good teams. So it's not like they're just going to shy away against Northeastern, who's been very, very good this season, one of the best mid-major teams in the country. But it's not like Harvard hasn't played some really good teams this year. They have, and obviously Northeastern, they have played 3 times this year, and they did lose all 3 games. It's very tough to beat a team a 3rd time, a 4th time. That's just how it is. The more you play a team, obviously the more chances you give the other team to kind of pick up on some things that, that could potentially give them an advantage over you. Harvard's pitching has been an issue this year for them, and an 8.14 team ERA. The best ERA on the team is a 3.66 ERA. So obviously you can see pitching is a major difference between Northeastern and Harvard. Harvard does have some guys that can hit. If you look at Cooper George, who hits 349 on the year, also adding in 5 home runs and 25 runs batted in. He's a guy that Northeastern will have to watch out for today. Just like on the other end of the field, Harvard's going to have to game plan for Cam Maldonado and also Harrison Feinberg. One of the guys I'll mention from Harvard is Gio Colosante, if I pronounced that right. 6 home runs, 22 runs batted in on the year with a 314 batting average. So some power there. They're hitting .265 as a team on the year with 30 home runs. They've given up 31 home runs from their pitching staff. They have 30 home runs as a team. So they do have some power and can hit the ball, but obviously pitching has been a major issue for them. So we'll see what happens in tonight's game. It should be a great matchup. It's at Fenway Park. So obviously Northeastern's pretty close by. Harvard's pretty close by. There should be a good crowd for tonight's game at 7 p.m. Anyways, that'll wrap up this episode. I do apologize, as I said, for the wind and the cars driving by. It's a beautiful day in Boston, so I just wanted to get a quick episode in while I was on a walk. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Much appreciated, as always. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys again soon. Thank you.